Hey, it's Craig Syracuse, and welcome to another episode of Walk in Faith, the show where we go beyond the image and we discover who our guests really are. You might know them from TV, the big screen, or even the world of sports, but do we really know who they are as a person? Do we know what motivates them? Do we know what inspires them? Well, that's what we're here to find out. On this episode of Walk in Faith, August Turak joins us again to delve into the business model that he writes about in Business Secrets of the Trappist Monks, a model that he himself successfully applied to 2 companies. Stay tuned and walk with us. Augie, thank you so much. So, Augie,
really enjoying this.
Thank you. So you have both of these books. Like I said, I really enjoyed the Business Secrets. How do you apply, or how did you apply these secrets, or how can somebody apply these secrets to their everyday life and their business?
Well, first of all, the essence of both Brother John and Business Secrets of the Trappist Monks is the idea of selflessness. That the purpose of every human life is to be transformed from a selfish person into a selfless person. I look at the 2 books as bookends because Brother John is an individual. It talks about an individual path, that my own personal path when I met Brother John and how he helped save me by teaching me the purpose of life. And then the Business Secrets is like a bookend because it's about group selflessness, about organizational selflessness. And as I say there, the more successfully we forget our selfish motivations, the more successful we become. So what's cool, in my own opinion, about Business Secrets is not only am I talking about the monks and how they run their businesses and why they're successful, but I walk people through how I did this in my own business. We started with $2,500 in 1993 with 3 of my spiritual buddies. We didn't even have a business plan. All we did is wrote down our spiritual principles that we were going to live by. And my partner said, we're smart. We don't have a business plan, but we're smart guys. We'll figure out something to do. And we took $2,500, put it in a pot, and without putting any more money in, without borrowing any money, we ended up eventually with a company that was sold for $150 million.
Was this Yext? Which company?
No. We started.
So many companies.
Yext was a company that I ended up doing consulting work. No, my company was Raleigh Group International.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
And eventually we started another company called Elsinore Technologies, which is still around today, as a matter of fact. And in 1999, an Israeli company called Mutech bought Raleigh Group and Elsinore. And then a couple years later, the combined companies were flipped to BMC Software for $150 million in cash. And so I illustrate in Business Secrets exactly how we did this using Trappist business principles ourselves. So don't give me this nonsense that I'm a tree hugger and I've never made a payroll and I don't know what it's really like in the trenches. So it's easy for me to think these Trappists are, no, I did it.
And I mean, you continue to be extremely successful. And one of the things in your book, which I think it was when you sold to the Israeli company. I mean, you even at the end, you had such integrity where you wanted the employees to benefit from it. So even if somebody was to doubt you and say, oh, this guy's just, whatever, just writing to write. I mean, you really stood by your principles. So you created those principles, 20 years before, and you didn't fold.
Absolutely. I tell the story in the book about how in late 80s, I started working with college students. I actually gave some lectures. And these 4 college kids came up and they said to me, we'd like you to coach. It was about my spiritual path. And they said, we'd like to learn more. And could you coach us? And I said, oh, well, all right, start a club here on campus. That'll allow you to get a room. I'll come over once a week and we'll coach you. And there was 4 of them, 4 boys. And so I started doing that. About 2 weeks into it, I get a telephone call from an old friend, Joe Tosick, and he says, Augie, I said, guess what, Augie? He said, I got $150 million and we're going to take UPI out of bankruptcy. And UPI is United Press International, which used to be a competitor to the Associated Press. And he said, we're going to take it out of bankruptcy and we're going to turn it around. He said, I'm putting the band back together, Pat Grotto, Gary Newbert, all of the boys. He said, I want you to be executive vice president. I'm going to pay you $500,000 a year. I'm going to give you a company car and the corporate plan and all that stuff, but you have to move to Washington, D.C. I said, Joe, I can't move to Washington, D.C. And he said, why? I said, because I just told these 4 kids that I'll coach them on their spirituality. For
he must
free.
have thought you were nuts, right?
That's exactly what he said.
This guy's crazy.
He says, you're absolutely nuts. He said, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. You're going to turn it down. I said, Joe, I got a better idea. Why don't you just move? He said, why don't you just come up to DC? He said, we got American University, Georgetown University. He said, whatever this crazy stuff you do with kids, you can do here. I said, I got a better idea. Move UPI to Raleigh, North Carolina. And he said, oh, my wife would never go for that. And I knew his wife, Molly. He said, Molly would never go for that. And I said, oh, there's plenty of girls down here. So as a result of that, I ended up starting my own company, and everything worked out for me. Meanwhile, UPI went back personally bankrupt. Joe himself actually ended up in financial difficulty. But the point is that my whole life I've seen when I made a stand based on my principles. I honestly believe this was God testing me. And like when I passed the test, everything came back to me 7 times over.
Let me ask you, in the moment, because in hindsight it's easy to say, oh, I made that decision, but did you have any fear or doubt, or were you able to make that decision immediately, or did you say, hey, I'm going to call you back tomorrow?
This reminds me of going to one of the monks one time, and I said, I don't understand. I said, John the Baptist in the Bible, it says, I'm not worthy of tying this man's sandal when he baptizes him. I said, later on, he sends one of his disciples to ask Jesus if he's the one. When he's in prison, he sends one of his disciples. And I said, how do you put these two things together? And the monk said to me, he's a human being. He has doubts. We all doubt. I had tremendous doubts. And not only that, a lot of loneliness. Because when I turned down a job opportunity like that, not only that, the word spread. So I got a reputation for being literally a religious nut. Because I was, I was honest with people. I'm not going to help these kids spiritually, and that's why I can't move. And
but they obviously, the people you spoke to don't have the same religious values, so they thought you were...
I'll tell you exactly what happened. I got another job opportunity to go to Colorado. I turned it down for the same reasons. I called the man who was a good friend of mine, John Berenson, and I called him up and I said, John, thank you for recommending me, but I had to turn it down, and here's why I turned it down. And he said, oh, Augie, don't worry about it. He said, I covered my butt. He said, I told him you're the best at what you do, but you're just some kind of spiritual nut or something, So it wasn't. So the word gets around, and so you become, a high maintenance kind of a guy. But it led to me actually starting my own business. But to jump back to your former question, I wanted to get to some basic points. People think selflessness and business doesn't go together, but they're wrong. I mean, one of the things that I did have happen, I came up in sales, and I was good enough at it that I was actually been on the cover of Selling magazine. And every great salesman knows that the more he forgets about himself, forgets about his product, forgets about his commission, forgets about his quota, and selflessly works to help his customer, the commissions take care of themselves. Let's talk about leadership. Most people get into leadership for selfish reasons. They want to get promoted. That's wrong, because the more you forget about getting yourself promoted, instead fanatically focus on getting other people promoted. Your job as a leader is not to get yourself promoted, it's to get other people promoted. But you know what happens? If you do that, then you find yourself being promoted even faster. And corporations are the same thing. When they forget about profits and focus on helping customers, helping their employees, the profits take care of themselves. This is a way of saying, seek first the kingdom of heaven. And I play with it in the book. Seek first the kingdom of selflessness, and everything else will take care of itself.
It's fun. When I was reading your book, there was so many things. I was telling my wife, I'm like, there's so many things that you wrote in that book, especially about being a leader. I said, these are attributes that I have. And a lot of people have. And one thing too about like always trying to help your employees or your staff and trying to figure out what their goals are and trying to, teach them and mentor them. Sometimes you get that notion like, wait, if I help them, they might, like someone the other day actually said this to me, she goes, don't, teach him too much, because then he could, they could pay him less and he could become, your supervisor. And I'm like, you missed the whole point of why I'm doing this. But, there is that realization that the enemy, I like to say, comes in and warns you like, don't do too much for someone.
I'll give you an example. People are so scared about other people poaching employees. Or I used to tell my employees all the time, listen, guys, keep your resume out there all the time. You should be interviewing all the time. Most of the big promotions I got was by going to another company. I said, I'm the last person in the world. If you find something that's going to help you grow. What ended up happening, the more I told them to do that, the less they wanted to go.
That's interesting.
But here's the trick, though, and it's not a trick. A lot of people, I hate this whole, there's in some of the evangelical movement, there's this prosperity consciousness. How do we use religion? And no, what I'm talking about has nothing to do with that. Nothing. Can I repeat that? Nothing to do with that. If you want to be promoted by helping other people be promoted, you've got to actually become, again, transformation, become the kind of person who can honestly look in the mirror and say, I get far more pleasure out of seeing another person succeed than I do to see. Now, we have an analogy to that. Most fathers and mothers can know what that means. They know what it means to have a child, and it was so much more fun seeing him hit a home run than it ever was for me to hit a home run. But you have to get to a point where you really feel that way about your employees. You really feel that way about helping other people get promoted. You really feel that way about your customers. So it isn't this little tricky thing that you do. You know, I'm going to help a little old lady across the street, and I'll go buy a lottery ticket and I'll win because I helped a little old lady across the street. Because really, in that point, really, what are you doing? You just want to win the lottery, and the little old lady becomes a means to the lottery. What I'm talking about, what the Trappists are talking about, with Business Secrets of Trappist Monks, is not that. This talks about becoming authentically, sincerely the kind of selfless person, and then these other. I see that in my own life. Only
And the
to
word
extent
you
that
use is holy, which is an interesting word. We'll come right back. If you have a few more minutes, stick around.
Sure.
Be right back with Augie.
Every year, millions of dolls are created, perfectly designed to bring joy to people everywhere. But what happens to the dolls who aren't so perfect?
Welcome to Uglyville, friend. Wake up, Moxie.
I've always believed the big world is real. I know I'll find the perfect kid for me, but I'm starting to wonder, with no evidence, no proof, what if it's not true?
Find your own truth.
Come on! Wow. Guys, what if this is the way to the big world?
How do we get up there? Anytime now, guys.
What's perfection?
Who is that?
That's Lou. He's the most perfect one here.
Let me break it down.
Welcome to the Institute of Perfection, where only the best will meet their perfect human match.
You're an engineer/model.
My accessories will make me different.
You're a lawyer/model.
I'm an individual, exactly like the rest of you.
You're not a model. Data does not compute.
Do you honestly think your little band of sock puppets stands a chance here? It's probably better if you just go back where you belong.
Show them who you are.
Are we really not good enough for the big world?
No, our flaws make us unique. Ew. Those are all worth fighting for. Open up their eyes.
You do know that Lou is gonna make it super hard for you.
Well, I say bring it on, Lewis.
Open every door on your destiny. Live as if you are what you were and you'll always be unbreakable.
We can be pretty lovable.
Bless their ugly little hearts.
Getting crazy, getting loose. What's your name?
Wedgehead?
I love literal naming. Isn't that right, gibberish cat?
Welcome back. Thank you, Augie. So we've been talking a lot, which this has been fantastic. And the word that I've been really thinking about is successful. Like, you use that word a lot. Can you define what is success? Do we seek success? How do you gain success? Because a lot of people define it differently. And also, can a company be successful if they focus primarily on profits? And can a man be happy if he focuses primarily on himself?
Well, let's go first of all to the second question, because that's easy. No and no. Of a company.
You see that a lot, though. There are a lot of successful companies that focus primarily on money.
But they're not successful. Because now we have to go back to your first question now. What does it profit a man if he gaineth the whole world and loses his immortal soul? So, first of all, what is my definition of success? And my definition of success is selflessness, is to be transformed from a selfish to a selfless person. Now, what I say is that all life is longing for transformation. Every acorn wants to be transformed into an oak. Life back to death, back to life again, all these transformational things. So everything is longing for transformation, but there's three kinds of transformation. When a thirsty man drinks, he transforms his condition. When a poor man hits the lottery, he transforms his circumstances. But when Mr. Scrooge wakes up an utterly new man on Christmas morning, he has experienced a transformation of being. And to me, this transformation of being, what Mr. Scrooge, and I like to use Mr. Scrooge because it's a secular example of Jesus. I mean, it's, you know, you plug in Jesus there just as easily, right? So when you, if you go through this transformational experience, what St. Paul called kenosis, etc., then you've experienced a transformation of being. And to me, success is how close, either do you experience this, have this experience, which I believe Brother John had, that's what I talk about in my book, Brother John, or how close can we get to it in terms of our evolution of ourselves? And this is what sainthood is. This is, you know, so to me, success is to become a saint. So now, in my own personal life, it's a very trivial thing, but it's a very wonderful thing to me. Some years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was coming to my gym, and there was a man there handing out towels, which is interesting because I've never seen him before, and I've never seen him since. They usually don't hand out towels, they have a pile of them. So this guy was there, and he was in the late middle age, maybe 55, 60 years old. He hands me the towel. When I reach out, he won't let go of it. And he looks at me and he says, "If you could be anywhere right now doing anything, where would you be doing what right now?" And without hesitation, I said, "I'd be right here, right now, doing this." And I walked down the hallway, and my eyes filled with tears. And I realized that that answer was true. It had come from the very bottom of my being. I had certainly not anticipated he was going to say that. And I really, to me, that was success. You know, I remember I was at St. John studying theology, and this woman did the homily. We had our own masses, and this woman was doing the homily. And she said, her whole homily was this. She read from the Bible where it says, "Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be." And you know, it's almost a cliche. It's almost, you know, hackneyed, but I love that. And so if you can get to that, what did T.S. Eliot say? "We will not cease from our explorations until we arrive where we started and know the place for the very first time." That's success. You know, I remember one other success I see is when, and I think it is possible, you know, when the Lord, I get tears in my eye every time I think about it, when in the gospel, when you hear that voice in heaven that says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Now, I'm not saying that you're going to hear a literal voice from heaven, but I think we can arrive at that place. And when you do that, you will experience the peace that surpasseth understanding. And that to me is success. And when you get to that place, what you're going to find is that you are trusted. People really, really trust you. They realize you don't have an axe to grind. You're not working from fear. You're not working from trying to outdo them. And all of a sudden, people come to you and opportunities come to you. And then suddenly you're experiencing this kind of success that other people think is the purpose of life, or that financial success or books or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. I want to pick that up when we come right back. We'll be right back, guys. For Augie.
This summer, you're invited to a magical place where weird is celebrated, strange is special, and beauty is more than meets the eye.
Good morning, Uglyville!
Hello, gorgeous. Let's check out how you look today. Short and stubby, nubby teeth out on full display. You're pinkish red, got this thing on your head, and whoa, girl, you couldn't look better. 'Cause there's a scrambled sun in a day glow sky, and the mood couldn't be any brighter. And as the slam bang city goes rocketing by, well, my head couldn't feel any lighter. It's like a fun house ride, the kind you just can't miss. Call it crazy, and yet, is there anything better than
ugly dog is here. Story of the day, of the month, of the year. Here's a little scoop on the way down, on down. Check out the flow.
The cats are rapping. Lobster snapping.
But only the dog makes the party happen.
So put in your paper. Seal it with a kiss.
It couldn't be better than this.
We got our freak flags flying completely unfurled, and we just couldn't be more on fire. Is there anything better than this? No, it couldn't get better than.
I have a feeling we're not in Uglyville anymore.
Look, guys.
What's perfection?
Don't know, but let's go say hi.
Hello.
Must be a customary greeting here.
Couldn't be better than this.
Welcome back. So Augie, it's interesting. There's two things. One is that, it's difficult for, you understand the definition of success, but, society tells us one thing, right? Success is when you accumulate stuff, when you have money and you have fame and whatever the definition of success is, but from a spiritual point of view, it's not. And like you said, when you become, you don't seek success. Success seeks you.
Success is not something that you seek directly. It's something you get out of the corner of your eye, or as a friend of mine used to say, it's a trailing indicator. It's a byproduct of living the right kind of life. The kinds of things that we think of, money and things like that, are a byproduct. And in my book, I talk about aiming past the target. That in archery, we always aim past the target. In golf, you aim for the back of the cup. In basketball, aim for the back of the rim. So aim past the target. So if you want a success in life, then you aim to become the right kind of person. And then again, seek first the kingdom of heaven and everything else comes unto you. Easy to say, but it's very, very hard to do.
That's the thing too. It's hard to, all of this is fantastic, but it's difficult for someone to even examine their own life and to say, you had that situation when you were in the hospital, but to really look at your own soul and your life and say, I've been living my life wrong for this amount of time, or I'm living in sin. It's a lot. It's easier to brush it under the rug and live by society standards and say, you know what, this is right. I am living for myself. I'm living for the money. This is the reason for my existence. But it's really not, but it's difficult to examine that. Another thing, you mentioned it, but you really didn't tap into it, was what is your purpose? You said, you talked about, finding your purpose in life, and what is the ultimate purpose? Have you ever sat there and discovered, why are you here? What is your purpose in life? What is God's ultimate goal for your life?
Two things. First of all, to emphasize what you just said, I read an article in the New York Times years ago about Mepkin Abbey, the monastery where Brother John took place. And a bunch of people were interviewed, and they said, oh, it's beautiful, and it's wonderful, and it's peaceful, and everything. And finally, they got to this guy, and he said, yeah, it's peaceful and idyllic, all right. He said, but when you're sitting on a park bench overlooking the Cooper River for hours on end, he says, you find yourself thinking about a lot of things you might rather not think about. So one of the reasons why we don't seek out prayer and we don't seek out solitude and seclusion and quiet is because exactly what you were saying, that a lot of the things we don't want to face the fact that we might not be living the right kind of life. And I talk about a girl there in my book when I gave an assignment to my college students to go to the Duke Chapel once a day and just sit for 5 minutes, because some of them were atheists. I said, you don't have to pray. I said, if you don't want to pray, don't pray. Just go and sit for 5 minutes. And they couldn't do it. And finally, this kid said, after about 3 weeks, he said, why can't I understand? I pass that chapel 1,000 times a day. Why can't I go in? And this girl said, I don't know about you, but I know why I didn't. And there was something in her voice, and everybody just looked at her, and she said, I'm afraid I'm going to find out I'm wasting my life. Wow. And we just sat with it. The Holy Spirit came in the room, and I just let them sit with it for about 20 minutes after that. It was an amazing experience. But getting to my purpose, in some ways, this is going to sound arrogant. I don't know how else to put it. I just do what I do. I'm just living my life now. I remember my old Zen teacher was asked that question, and he says, I'm just now at this point in my life, I'm reading my lines. And I feel like as if there's something bigger that's operating in my life that's just telling me what to do next. And so I don't have this, another way of putting it though, a more rational way of putting it, I guess, is that my purpose is to help other people find a higher purpose in their life. I have a nonprofit corporation. All my books, all the money I made from the Brother John, $100,000, is donated to this charity. And it's to help people find higher meaning and purpose in their life. Because I believe right now that what America and Western civilization generally is experiencing a crisis of meaning and purpose. People don't have a higher meaning. The World Health Organization said that the biggest single disease afflicting Western civilization is depression. I've had five friends that I grew up with commit suicide.
Wow.
We are the richest civilization that's ever lived, and we're committing suicide in droves. We have all kinds of boys living in their basements of their parents' houses until they're 30 years old, addicted to porn, addicted to video games. You know, we have the opioid crisis. We just found out that our average life expectancy has gone down for the last 4 years. The Wall Street Journal did a big article about loneliness and being a big epidemic. They're calling it an epidemic of loneliness. All of these things, and I can name many, many more, are people that are living in despair. And of course, what do we say? Every time I read an article about one of these things specifically, well, if we just had a minimum wage, if we just had jobs, if we just had, man does not live by bread alone. And we don't have, we have a crisis where we're not supplied. So what I'm trying to do, Brother John, book Brother John is called Brother John, a monk, a pilgrim, and the purpose of life. And if you recall, the essay that I wrote back in 2004 was, what is the purpose of life? And this is what I'm trying to do, is say, listen, there is a plan, as you said, there is a mission for you in life, and it is much higher, and you need that. You have to have that in your life, and that's what whether you know it or not, you're not looking for this transformation of condition, which is eating or drinking. Mm-hmm. You're not looking for a transformation of circumstances to just hit the lottery or a bigger house. Those are fine. I don't mind you having a bigger house, but that's not going to fill the hole in your soul. Success, traditional success, fame, fortune. No, you're looking for this transformation of being that only comes through a higher purpose, which we call God.
Great. This was fantastic. Augie, thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much.
God bless you.
It was a great time with you.
Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it.